the power of personalization, the power of customer service. They missed a promised date for the shipping of a pair of shoes to this woman. At that point, the choice of a startup, they could have said, we're so busy doing other things, there's just one customer. But instead they said, no, we're gonna go above and beyond. They overnighted a pair of shoes to her and sent her a coupon and profusely apologized. So she writes back an email with the subject line, wow.
Welcome to the Brand Podcast, where you'll learn from successful omnichannel brands, which in turn will help your brand grow. Here's your host, Liran Hirschkorn. The Brand Podcast.
Liran Hirschkorn, your host of the Brand Podcast, and you're about to listen to a series of episodes we recorded at Shop Talk with some very special guests, all hosted by our VP of Marketing, Kate Bray. Enjoy the episodes.
Welcome to the Retail Renaissance series. This is chapter 1 of 5. We are in the penthouse suite at the Delano. I cannot believe that we are here. This has been months in the making. I'm sitting across from Alex Genov, the head of customer research and marketing insights at Zappos, as well as the author of the book, Forget the Customer, See the Person, a business guide to applying empathy in the real world. Is that correct?
That is it.
Awesome. Welcome, Alex. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited to have you here and so excited to ask you some questions. First, before anything else, I'd love to get to know you and how you found yourself as the head of customer research and marketing insights.
Absolutely, Kate. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, this is an incredible setting, and I really love the title, the Renaissance part. Really, that gotta love that. But it is because it fits with what we're going to be talking about, which is humanizing business, humanizing retail, and a little bit about me. As you said, I'm leading customer research and marketing insights for Zappos. I've been with Zappos for almost 10 years now, loving every minute of it. My background is in experimental social psychology, and that's what I've brought to the business world is, understanding of humans, individual differences, that sort of thing that helped me form my view on not only business, but how to help both businesses and consumers. And so when in my job, my main role is to help the organization understand customers as individuals. I've thought obviously a lot about it, and that led to also co-authoring the book with two amazing friends of mine. I'm excited to chat with you.
What was it like to write a book? What made you want to write a book?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. I just felt like I liked writing. In my academic career, I had to write quite a bit.
Okay.
But it was very structured and a very specific format. And then when LinkedIn came along, I was one of the early adopters when there were no pictures on LinkedIn.
Okay.
It was just like this resume website. But then as they developed, they created this blogging platform essentially. And so I enjoyed, writing little bits and pieces. And little by little, I felt like it was time somehow. And I don't know, It felt easy at the time. Now I'm trying to write another one, and it's much harder for some reason.
Is it really the second time around?
It's just like
That's awesome.
procrastinating.
Yeah, that's 90% of the battle. So in your book, you talked about customer centricity versus product centricity. Can you define what it means to be customer centric and what the alternative is and why that may be problematic?
It's a great question, Kate. So what I've learned about product centricity versus customer centricity is mostly from this amazing free Coursera course that I looked at years ago, and I don't know how it was free because it's taught by the top marketing minds in the world, Professor Peter Fader, Professor Khan from the Wharton School. And so they defined it's a very specific framework of product centricity versus customer centricity. And the way they describe it, product centricity is the dominant business model where you win in business by having product superiority and operational excellence, which is you have this exceptional product that nobody else has, right? And just like think about Ford, the Model T back in the day, everybody wanted to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, so Professor Fader has a lot of examples. Some of them are Apple, for example. You think it is a fantastic company. They're a product-centric company. They don't really segment their customers. They have one shape pretty much.
Seems like that's started to become problematic more recently for them.
Maybe. Well, I mean, I can't say. I mean, I don't have any data to back this up. But the point is, when they issue a update, we take whatever they they give us, right? Whether you like it or not. That's but then you have their fan, boys and girls line up and wait for hours and hours to get the next product.
Right, yeah.
That's product superiority. And then you have operational excellence and companies that, and Amazon is a customer-centric company, but it's also a very operationally excellent company. And so nobody can catch up to their operations and the way they achieve this incredible selection and great prices. So that's really the dominant way. He even talks about Nordstrom having this excellent customer service. But Professor Fader's point is treating everybody the same, even if you treat them fantastically, is not customer-centric. The way he defines customer centricity is if you serve millions of customers, then you recognize that they're not the same. And that's where, for example, my experience as a psychologist, a social psychologist, comes in, and individual differences-wise. People are different, right? And we vary in thousands of ways. And you cannot treat all your customers the same. And when you treat all of them the same, you're expending a lot of resources. You peanut butter your resources, and then you're effective in one section and you're not effective in other sections. So to be truly customer-centric is to understand your customers so well that you know who your best customers are, your most profitable customers, the ones that really love your products and spread the word for you, and treat those customers like above and beyond, right? Treat them like royalty. And the rest that are still paying for products and services, you treat well, but you really don't expand your resources on those.
You use the term peanut buttering, which is something you talked about in your book. And if I'm understanding that correctly, which I may not be, one of the examples I think you gave was like the common belief that Americans have 2.5 children. And then you asked, like, well, have you ever seen a half of a child? Like, that was a really good example. But is that peanut buttering?
No, this is gelling, peanut butter and gelling. No, I'm kidding. It's kind of related because peanut buttering means you have like a jar of peanut butter, and then you spread it evenly across all pieces of bread.
Okay.
Right, you spread it evenly. So that's spreading your resources evenly across all customers. That's the peanut buttering.
Okay.
And it doesn't make sense because some customers really love your product, and you should pay special attention to those customers.
I see.
But then others are occasional customers, and if you spread the resources, you're basically not achieving anything.
Okay.
But the 2.4, this whole joke that usually when I give talks, I start with that. I introduce myself on a personal level. Married, we live in Las Vegas, the entertainment capital of the world. We have 2.4 children. And people laugh about this, but that's what happens when you start averaging humans. So when you go and run your business only based on numbers in a spreadsheet, that's what happens. You sometimes forget that your customers are humans.
Something as a marketer that I have struggled with is finding passion in customer research and data insights, because there is an element to it that does sometimes feel manipulative, like I'm trying to get them to do something inadvertently. And so one really profound quote in your book that I really loved was, creating meaningful products like making gifts is an act of responsibility and pleasure. Responsibility because through the gift we have the chance to create a more meaningful world. Pleasure because when we love the gift, we take pleasure ourselves in making it. So that was really beautiful. I love that. So can you expand on that quote and how customer centricity creates meaning, not just for marketers, but for the customers as well?
It's a fantastic topic. Thank you, Kate, for bringing this up. And I'll first have to attribute this quote. So in the book, I'm quoting Professor Roberto Vergante.
Oh, really? Okay, that's right.
So this is a quote from him, and I've learned a lot from him on innovation. And I met him when I was at Intuit, and he was advising Intuit and TurboTax and the Intuit teams on innovation. And his whole point is, his whole work is on innovating on meaning, not just innovating on solutions. So when you innovate on solutions, design thinking and IDEO and their methods are perfect. But his thought is about when you want to innovate and take the product to the next level, the service to the next level. Radical innovation has to be based on meaning. And that's what does that mean? So, for example, working with metaphors like the gift giving. And so I'll give you an example to make it concrete. What gift would you give to someone you don't know at all? Right? You would probably give them cash, say, here, buy yourself something nice. Guess how that's gonna go if I do that to my wife of almost 20 years.
No, well.
Right? Exactly. Why? Because I'm supposed to know her really well. So when you know somebody really well, then you've heard they mention something, and then months pass and you remember it, and then you surprise them, right? And their reaction is they're stunned, right? The same way, what do you give to a billionaire or the richest person in the world? You don't give them. If you give them money, it's not gonna do anything. But if you know them well enough and you give them something, let's say sentimental for them, then they're gonna be wow.
Awesome.
So it's all predicated on how well you know the other person.
Okay.
And that's something that is at the core of this book, but also of how I work. I know at Zappos and I've worked at other companies, is to make this parallel of the relation between a company and a customer, and kind of liken it to how people relate to each other. And when you do that, then you realize that when you talk about loyalty, for example, that's what creates this feeling, because loyalty is a feeling, right? You're loyal to someone, and you would stick with them, and if they mess up, you would forgive them. So if you think of that business relationship as an interpersonal relationships, a lot of opportunities open up.
So speaking of Zappos, I want to talk about how all of this ties into Zappos saying we are a customer service company that happens to sell shoes. At a tactical level, how does that translate into the data?
So let me back up a little bit, and this is I was lucky to experience Zappos under Tony Hsieh, who was the original investor and CEO. And he was a very unusual and one-of-a-kind leader and revolutionary leader. I mean, it's really he had some really prophetic initiatives and so on. And he would say that because early on they discovered this the power of personalization, the power of customer service. And the anecdote that started all of this was, and Zappos is turning 25 years now, but think about like 23-4 years ago. Think of a startup that's just starting to sell shoes. Nobody else is selling shoes. Nobody knows what they're doing. The internet is very young. I mean, they would go to a store in San Francisco and say, can I take a picture of this shoe? And the store owner, most would kick them out, but then some would say, sure. And they take the picture and they put it up on the website with a little buy button underneath. And as soon as somebody clicks buy, they run to the store, buy the shoe, and ship it. So this is the environment. And one time they missed a promised date for the shipping of a pair of shoes to this woman who needed it for a special occasion. And then she was very upset. She wrote them an email. And think of, at that point, the choice of a startup, they could have said, we're so busy doing other things. There's just one customer, forget it.
Yep.
But instead they said, no, we're going to go above and beyond. They overnighted a pair of shoes to her and sent her a coupon and profusely apologized. And so she writes back an email with the subject line, wow. So this is almost 25 years ago.
Awesome.
And from that point, so you can see from that anecdote, I guess they realized we're gonna double down on customer service. They didn't have data back then to back it up, but that was a very counterintuitive, and a lot of these genius business decisions that result in huge business success many times are based on this unconventional kind of decision.
Okay, so tell me about the legendary hiring process at Zappos and how that ties into this idea.
Sure. I mean, it was almost a decade ago when...
Is it true that they pay employees $1,000 to leave?
Right. I mean, it's some varies, but when I reached out first, spoke to a recruiter, it was a very pleasant conversation. At some point, they asked me, "Please rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 7. How weird are you?" So that was, and I paused for a second. I didn't want to be 7. I didn't want to be 1. So I kind of got somewhere in the middle. And then after this first conversation, the recruiter invited me to come to Vegas for an in-person interview using a poem. So he sent me a poem.
Really?
Right. So it starts with that, right? It's something that I'm talking about 10 years after. And then I came here, and my plane landed, and as I was still in the plane, and I got the text message from Jen, who still works at Zappos, and she goes, "Hi, I'm Jen from Zappos, and I'm here to give you a ride to Zappos." Very nice woman. We chatted, and towards the end of the ride, she goes, "Do you gamble?" And I said, well, I thought to myself, that's got to be a trick question, right? I said, "No, just the penny slots once in a while." This was not the trick the real question. I think the real question that then they asked Jen was, "How did Alex treat you?" And I think that's basically encapsulates this idea of you hire nice people, you hire responsible people, so you don't have to manage them later. And if somebody is really treating people that are as kind of maybe in the service industry,
For sure.
really poorly, then those, even if you're a great finance person, great technologist, you don't have a place.
I remember seeing this term, customer Umwelt.
Umwelt, yeah.
Umwelt?
Yeah.
Umwelt? Okay, so what is that?
Sure.
And why is it important?
I think it's German. It means bubble or something to that effect.
Bubble. Okay.
And this comes from a book that I was exposed to in graduate school. Again, in the context of studying psychology. And it was written by this guy, Jacob von Uexküll, in the 30s. And he was a biologist, and he studied ecosystems and animals and how they interact. And so what he ended up proving was that there's not one reality, essentially. Humans perceive reality in one way. Different animals perceive it in different ways, and the way he proved it was absolutely genius. So this is so many years ago. The technology was so rudimentary, but he basically proved that, for example, fighting fish in these type of fish, they move so quickly in the world that in their perceptual world, in their perceptions, they slow down time, essentially. And the way he proved it was he used using conditioning. So basically, he would give him he had a great disc behind the tank, and then he had, for another occasion, he had a disc with gray with black and white sections. And so he would feed the fish some food, and then when he showed them the gray disc, he would shock the water. And so they learned that when they saw gray,
It's
it was painful. And so the point, and then he started rotating the gray, the disc with the gray, black and white sections, and humans start perceiving that as gray. So the sections blend into a gray at let's say 1/50th of a second, and the fish perceived it as gray at a different speed, because then you can tell when they backed off from the
Oh my God.
So ingenious, so simple and so ingenious. So the idea is that you take it to our worlds. I mean, you can perceive, I can tell a joke and you'd be laughing and you'd be probably offended. So that's another idea. We perceive things differently. And if you take it to marketing and product development, the idea is to really understand that group of customers that have the same beliefs or similar similar needs. And so in the book we call that kind of the that's your perceptual bubble in a way. So that's the analogy between saying, there's not one reality really,
Right.
and then when you understand your customers really well, you can serve them, you can talk to them in so much more meaningful ways if you really understand their worlds.
That's something that I think I get a little overwhelmed with when I am creating a brand strategy or writing a marketing plan and thinking about a persona, is the bubble that the customer is living in or the target persona is living in. There's so many nuances to their experience. Like, you can get into the LinkedIn influencers that they're following for Incrementum, for example. We're targeting a certain segment of the B2B market, and we can think about who are they following on LinkedIn, where do they work, like their family life doesn't necessarily affect any of these decisions that we're making. And so how important are those nuances, and how can those be considered at a macro level in a really meaningful way?
Right, that is the $64,000 question. And one thing that you didn't mention was why, right? So who they follow, when, how, but it's so much more powerful if you understand why they follow them. And so I'll give you an example from Zappos. When the business looked at the spreadsheets, at the performance, right, they noticed that a lot of women buy only for their kids and not for themselves. And so then that's the reality, that's the what, that's undeniable, right? That's the data. And so then if we didn't dig deeper, the decision would be to send them emails to urge them to buy for themselves. But we did this extra step of research. We visited a lot of families. We spoke to a lot of moms to discover. For me, was an aha, this phenomenon called mommy guilt. So what that was, and you kind of nod, you're a mom, but the shared sentiment was that before kids, I'm into shopping and I love fashion, so I'd buy a ton of stuff. Now that I have a child, everything goes to the child, and when I buy something for myself, I feel guilty. And so that's not in the data, right? And how do you discover it without talking to people?
Yeah, I actually have a trick around that. So if I take my daughter shopping, since I work in the retail space, I just call it, like an education.
Oh yeah,
teaching her what the aisles of Aritzia look like. And
no, but the point is,
intentional.
the point is that not all women feel that. That's the whole point.
No, I get that mom guilt for
right?
sure.
But some do, some don't. But understanding who's feeling it and who doesn't, then can help you be much more empathetic and much more relevant to them.
So what you're saying is that when you are trying to create those personas, you're going to find way more success in understanding the why, because there will be commonalities between this mom who lives on this side of the country and has a completely different life than this mom, for example. And so market segmentation, I want to ask you about how brands should go about that from a tactical perspective, and maybe what defines a good segmentation strategy in your opinion.
Sure. Then there are many kinds of segmentation you can do. One is just transactional segmentation, which is the most straightforward because the numbers are in the spreadsheets, and then you can define just you average things, right, to get to the 2.4 children quickly, but then you can see who's really profitable and who shops with you, and that's undeniable. That's the hard data. But then you know what's happening and when it's happening, but you don't know why it's happening, and that it really gives businesses the edge to understand why people behave the way they do. And to do that, companies have done. There's three types generally: demographic, behavioral, and psychographic or attitudinal. And demographic is the easiest and the most straightforward because it's, men, women. This data is straightforward. But it's to me the most useless and silliest one because I'll give you this little example, and I have a slide for that. But even without the slide, it works. So imagine with me somebody who's male, born in 1948, British, lives in a castle, married twice, extremely famous. Can you think of?
I was thinking the first person that came to mind was Simon Cowell.
Simon Cowell.
I don't think that he was born in 1948.
I don't know if he lives in a castle either, but usually people say King Charles, right? That's the King Charles, right?
Sense. Okay. Yeah.
And then, yes, indeed, King Charles' picture comes up, but then another person who fits the exact same description is Ozzy Osbourne. And so imagine that face next to King Charles, and they're exactly identical in that.
Completely different.
And they're completely different. You see their makeup, right? They both wear makeup, but they do it for different reasons. So that tells you how useless, in a way, demographic segmentation is.
Totally. Yeah, I agree with that.
And then if, for example, if you segment people by age, then let's say on your next birthday, you go into the next cohort, but then are you a different person, right? You're not, you're the same person. So a much better way of segmenting is based on attitudes and beliefs, deeper psychological characteristics that don't change that often. And they also are very powerful because they motivate behavior. That's what motivates behavior. So if somebody is, for example, there are people who are extremely wealthy, right? But they're penny pinchers. So the wealthy part is a demographic characteristic, but their attitude of they would go and rummage through bins to find the cheapest possible thing is a psychological thing. And that's only one example.
You talked too about the 80-20 principle and how that demographic and psychographic data is really only 20% of the picture. So one thing that comes to mind for me is how is AI and how that's gonna illuminate some of that picture for marketers and even customers in a way. But I'd love to understand from your perspective what some of the shortcomings of AI are and maybe why you don't consider it a cure-all for some of the questions that you're answering.
Yeah, and it's it's not a cure-all because it's a how. And that's one thing that I really learned that when I was at Intuit, this very important difference between the what and the how. And if you get bogged down before you understand what you're solving for, you get bogged down in the how, it's a rabbit hole, and you're gonna waste the time of a lot of people. So if you're first clear on what you want to accomplish, then you move to the next stage, which is, okay, how are we gonna do this? We're gonna use technology. What kind of technology? Okay, AI now is one of the hottest technologies out there. But if you start going backwards, like, oh, everybody's using AI, so we have to use AI, so then you end up, so what do we do with it?
Right.
Then it's a trap. And that's something that you need to avoid. So to bring my experience from working at Zappos, you started this conversation by talking about customer service. So Zappos developed this amazing model of customer service, which is actually based on hospitality, the idea of hospitality, which is, it's different from service. It's a higher level of interaction where it's defined by Danny Meyer, for example, this famous New York restaurateur, as when something happens for you, not to you, or when you're on your customer side. And look at the Zappos customer service. It's you pick up the phone right away. You're greeted by funny, empathetic people. They solve your problem. They go above and beyond. There's no limits. The longest call was almost 11 hours, that sort of thing,
really?
right? But that is so when you take that, and that's what made Zappos famous back in the day. Then the question is, how do you bring that spirit to the digital world? How do you digitize that? And then you can say, well, we can use AI for that, and that may be the right solution. People talk about conversational commerce. It sounds better than just a chatbot, but what they mean is probably a more modern version of Clippy, right? Something that pops up and
Miss Clippy.
yeah, see, that's
Love
so
Clippy.
that's think of the new chatbots as just a better version of Clippy. But the point is, if you just have a chatbot and you have the really non-empathetic or pre-programmed responses that don't do much, that's not going to affect customers positively.
You specifically say forget the customer. Why do you use that language? Why would a marketer ever want to forget the customer?
Right. And this is something that I learned from Professor Roberto Verganti back when I first met him. It was at this internal UX event at Intuit. And the founder of Intuit, Scott Cook, is a great proponent of customer centricity and really understanding customers and customer research specifically. So he talked about, study, and they use the term user because it's a software product. So understand the user, study the user, talk to the user, survey the user. And then Roberto comes up for his talk and he goes, if you want to do radical innovation, forget the user. And what he meant was that the user is the person in a very specific context, very limited context of sitting in front of the computer using your program. And so the customer is the person in a limited context of purchasing your product or calling your customer service. And the point to this statement and this book is to say to really help customers meaningfully and build this relationship with them and this emotional connection, you need to go beyond that and understand them in the full context of their lives, right? Understand their fears, understand how they act in this context and that context. And a great example, Clayton Christensen was a big proponent of that. He talked about the jobs to be done, and he has a great example of the milkshake, for example. This company, maybe, I don't know, if one of the fast food chains wanted to grow their milkshake consumption. And they followed people and studied their behavior in the morning and the evening, and the milkshakes did different jobs in the morning to their commute to work than in the evening when they picked up their kids. So the same person, different context, different times of the day, right? Different needs. They created different products. So how they understood the person, they didn't understand just the customer.
What is something that brands in 2024 can implement in the next 24 hours, next 24 hours, that will have a profoundly positive impact on their marketing strategy?
I just say schedule calls with actual customers, real customers, and talk to them. And if you can, visit them in their homes with their permission, of course.
Is there data privacy laws against that?
You have to get their permission. Don't sneak into customers' homes without their permission.
I found you from your email.
Right. No, you need to build that trust and you need to build that rapport. But that observations and those conversations will trigger the empathy and will trigger a lot of conversations. And
I believe it.
And to me, that's the best thing that companies can do, is to bring a bit of a balance between this fascination now with AI and with big data and the technology part, with a bit more, humanity and understanding customers as individuals.
Yeah, you can't use AI to extract what an individual customer would answer to some of those questions. That's an excellent answer. Thank you, Alex.
Sure.
Does anybody have any questions for Alex while we have him here? So just to repeat the question, what can brands do to replicate Zappos company culture and commitment to their customers today? And are there any brands today that are a good example of that?
To me, that's the danger of living right now in this day and age, is this fascination with technology. That's what, everybody's talking about AI, and it's going to solve every problem, and it's going to streamline operations and everything, save companies money and so on. And then you tend to forget this, the human side of things. And to me, that was one of Tony Hsieh's really kind of innovator and kind of prophetic characteristics was he would spot counterintuitive solution, like we're going to invest in service when everybody else is cutting it, and which was not really based on data. I mean, he would have these iconoclastic sayings like, what's the ROI of hugging your mom? He had the reaction to this, everything is ROI and so on. But we have other examples like Amazon, and I've heard the story of how Prime got started. It was an idea from an employee, and then Bezos called all his top lieutenants one Saturday morning, and he was super excited about that. And the bean counter said, looked at the spreadsheet, said it's all going to work, and he said, no, we're going to try it. So I think you need that kind of courage and this foresight to go against the grain, I think. In terms of companies, it's hard to think of, for me, at least with my limited interactions with companies nowadays, for that focus on customer service. Amazon, the parent company, they have a different form of customer service, but I've always been really surprised and delighted by it.
Thank you so much for your time, Alex. I'm so glad that you made it out here, and I hope to do this again. I'd love to interview you before or after your next book. Do you know what you're going to call it?
Not sure, but it's got to be around trust and how you build trust in this age of numbers, something to that effect.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Okay.